This is Foreign Agent by Narwhal. Now, I love Narwhal's work. I got really into Narwhal with Earthbound, and I have read quite a bit of his other work, Nosferatu being notable, but mostly Earthbound is what I've gotten into, and I have a bunch of Narwhal books. I definitely want to go and chew through them and review them, and we're starting with Foreign Agent. This is definitely a Narwhal book, art and story by Narwhal. There's some meta art by Wayward Draws and House Tosis, but this is mostly done by Narwhal, taking the place over 5 chapters. This is an entirely black and white book. He has Earthbound is colored, a bunch of his other stuff he colors, but for this one he went black and white, and it is, I would say, suitable for the style. This tells the story of 2 soldiers who are deserters. They wander through the forest in the dead of winter, find shelter, and they form a very tentative friendship with a family despite a language barrier. Now, this is not really a story that introduces deep lore. It's not developing characters that deeply. So it's not like a traditional superhero comic book in that sense. It's not like a traditional fiction story in that sense where it's focusing on exposition and establishing stuff. This really is just getting a bunch of characters, putting them in an interesting situation, and having a decently satisfying payoff. Narwhal doesn't really go for, I'd say, the traditional rules of making comics in terms of how he draws, in terms of how he tells his stories. And while this doesn't work for a lot of people, you see the character designs are very simplistic. The line work is quite absurd. You see how he draws these figures. He doesn't draw stuff proportionally, and it's intentional how he draws with his very random proportions. He has very haphazard line work, but it really jives for a lot of people, and that's why he's been able to make a name for himself in independent comics, is because he has this very unique way of telling his stories and a very unique way of drawing them visually, and it leads to something that's really not seen in other independent comics. And everything that he does has this unique style and feel, and I do absolutely love this. This is definitely a very simplistic story, and what Narwhal likes to do is the reason why his books are quite thick. This is a pretty thick boy of a book, is that he uses a lot of, I would say, still pages, or I should say a lot of pages like this where you don't really have much in terms of lettering. You'll have, well, some scenes there's definitely dialogue, but a lot of this is where you won't have a lot of lettering. So there's a lot of visual storytelling that Narwhal utilizes, and he does that with lots of pages, and I do believe he draws digitally, so he's able to draw a lot faster than someone who's doing very highly detailed hand drawing, like a lot of people tend to do. Jack Herbert comes to mind, where there's a lot of focus on the fine details and drawing stuff realistically. Narwhal's got a very loose, absurdist style, and while this does not work for everybody, like I say, you either love Narwhal's style or you absolutely hate it. I don't think there's an in-between. This is definitely very much emblematic of his style, and he's taking everything that makes his storytelling and making his visuals good and telling a pretty interesting story that tells the story of, you have got these 2 soldiers who are deserters, August and Piper, and they're with this French family. And the interesting thing, what I love is how he letters stuff, is that you've got the English in the white lettering, you've got the other language in the black lettering, and they're communicating through drawings, and some of those drawings are shown. That's the one in the very beginning, but you've got drawings like this that actually make up some of the pages in the book. So absolutely just love the way he utilizes basically the visuals to tell a story. So a lot of comics rely on the words in the word bubbles to convey the story and the meaning to the reader. Narwhal relies, I'd say, very heavily on the visuals, on the actual, what you're actually looking at to tell the story. And while it seems like what he says is very, or what he draws is very simplistic, like I said, it's loose line work. It's not highly detailed. Lots of stuff is drawn in very with very in proportionally. You see how like the Everything looks like it's doodled, I would say, is probably the best way to say it. But in spite of that, or I should say because of that, it makes it for a fantastic story. Or I'd say a fantastic style that Narwhal has. And the stories that he tells with his style always suits him. So he doesn't really pick or do stuff that's out of his depth. So something like this, while it would seem like, it's supposed to be more dramatic, it's supposed to follow a very specific structure, the way he goes about telling the story, I'd say, is very unique and very much relying on the visuals, especially with a lot of the drawing. But all the while, you still have a lot of dialogue in this book. There is a good amount of lettering in this book, I should say. Or I should say there's a good amount of words in the lettering. And it's all very well structured. And it all makes sense. And it all really helps to characterize the characters that you see, but there isn't much character development where like Piper and August are developing or becoming different at the end than they are at the beginning. They're part of this general narrative that Narwhal is building, and it kind of reminds me of the Hateful Eight just a little bit, where the Hateful Eight was basically 8 people in a shack in the dead of winter in very post Civil War America. It's like 1870 or something like that. And that was a Tarantino movie that came out about 10 years ago. It reminded me of that in terms of just like some things, some of the themes, just like the general premise. But it is an interesting story. It's definitely not one that, like I said, there's no complex world building. There's implications. There's not say nods, but there's stuff that they do that nods to a larger narrative. It's never really explained. It really is just a piece of the puzzle to tell this story that's, I would say, very limited in scope, but at the same time quite interesting. And it's just fun to flip through. Despite how many pages it is, it's very quick to read because a lot of this, like, you can tell what a page is very quickly. It's very easy to read through a lot of these pages because of how simple they are. And while they are simple, they still communicate a lot to the reader. And that's where the glory of Narwhal is, in my opinion, is that he has this very simplistic, absurdist style, very abstract in how he tells his stories, but he's able to convey a lot to the reader because he's able to take what he knows about storytelling and visual storytelling and really package it up in a way that is very, very interesting and intriguing. So Foreign Agent really fits well within his body of work, and it's really part of the reason why I respect Narwhal as a comic book artist as much as I do, especially after reading Earthbound, where that's really out there. This one definitely is a little bit more of a grounded story, but he tells a grounded story in his unique style, and that's really what makes Narwhal so interesting in indie comics, is that he has this very unique style. You can know if Narwhal worked on something at like one glance, and Foreign Agent is no exception, which is why if you like what I've been showing you, and of course this is just a high quality book in terms of the paper quality, in terms of the way everything looks, it's got a very nice feel to read through. It's nice to flip through, and while, like I said, the line work is very, I would say, haphazard, it feels like it's doodled, it's all building a larger, I would say, visual experience that feels very coherent, cohesive, and intentional. And that's the thing with Narwhal, is that he knows how to draw, he just chooses to draw the way that he does. And that's, I would say, part of like the appeal of Narwhal, is that he chooses to do stuff in a way that goes against the grain of traditional comic book art. And that's why, and Foreign Agent is definitely a shining example of that. And I think one of the reasons why I like Narwhal as much as I do is really exemplified in this book. So hopefully you guys enjoy this book despite all of my rambling. Joker is out. Thank you for stopping by the Velvet Room. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you can keep up with Velvet Room Publishing. And go to velvetroompublishing.com if you want to go even deeper into the Velvet Room.